Hello, and thank you so much for joining us. We've got quite a few topics to get through today. Kay Murray, Tom Hamilton, and Janusz Michallik here to do so. Coming up, we'll be talking about Chelsea, the US men's national team fallout, transfers. We know you love a bit of that. We'll also be talking about a big game coming up on the return to action of the WSL. Sophie Lawson will be joining us for that. But let's get started, guys, by talking about one of the big transfers, Joao Felix in London for his Chelsea medical. How far does this actually go to fixing those problems? Because I suppose desperate times call for desperate measures, Janusz, and that's not to discredit the player. This is a very good player on his day when he does his best, but is he the right fit for Chelsea right now?
Yeah, obviously, the first reaction for me is that they probably needed a striker, somebody that can immediately come in and solve some of the issues that they have in that department, for sure. But, when I think about it, I would argue that Joao Felix is exactly what Chelsea need. I really think that. It took me a while to get to that point because I think he offers them a certain amount of flexibility, doesn't he? Right? I mean, there isn't just one problem at Chelsea Football Club. There are many problems there. First and foremost is injuries, and injuries not just to 10 players, but to a lot of key players. So if you think that, here's that player that needs to come in and score 10, 15 goals for the rest of the season immediately, well, I don't know if he's the answer. But I think if you look at no Armando Broja, if you look at no return date for Raheem Sterling, we just learned that Christian Pulisic is going to be out for 2 months, right? Aubameyang is back, but is he really? He may be never back, at least in the thoughts of Graham Potter, right? He substituted, as we know, in the last game as a substitute and all that. So I don't think there's a future there for him. Ziyech is struggling. So the more I think about it, the more I think that Joao Felix, the way he plays, may be exactly what's needed right now. Because as we know, he can be a false nine, not the greatest, but he could be. He can play behind as a second striker. He can be a playmaker. He can play on the left. So when you look at everybody that's missing right now, well, then at least you say, well, there's a player with quality that, if need be, can play in all those positions.
Do you agree, Tom?
Yeah, I think he's almost a bit of a sort of a luxury signing. I mean, it's a 6-month deal. We expect him to sign a new contract with Atletico Madrid. So if you're looking at, say, a short-term impact, this is exactly the sort of guy you want, as we talked about the versatility and so forth. And I think with this number of injuries, as we heard, Pulisic 2 months and other signings which haven't yet really clicked. So, saw at the start of the season, they were playing Sterling as a false nine. Then obviously Tuchel got sacked just days after bringing Aubameyang. The whole structure this season around the first team seems to be a little bit fractured. Now, Felix is someone you can imagine that Potter would absolutely adore to work with, like an incredible talent, and that versatility is king. But I'm surprised they've sort of brought him in perhaps as the first guy when you really think that midfield needs strengthening as well. So, I mean, it's a great signing. It's something which will excite the fans. Potter's talking about maybe even playing him as soon as tomorrow night against Fulham in that West London derby. But look towards that game on Sunday against Crystal Palace. He may start there. But it's something you can kind of sense it's one of those things where it's just trying to bring a bit of impetus to the season.
Potter, speaking of which, he will have to call on something. He's going to have to pull something out of the hat, isn't he, Janusz? Because he is very much under pressure. We even heard the fans singing Tuchel's name. Well, not all the fans, obviously, but some of the fans in that FA Cup game against City. How much more time does he left? How does he have left? How many more defeats would he be allowed?
Well, not many. Again, the system that is in place is obviously long-term, as we can tell. And even with Joao Felix, even though he may not be back, he'll be there for 6 months. It's, again, another young player coming in. This is being built for the future. But, it's still Chelsea Football Club, and you've got to have results, in the meantime. So I've said it before and say it again. I think what he needs to do is needs to show that there's progress. He needs to do Mikel Arteta. I apologize for repeating myself, but he needs to finish the season strong, even if it means likely not making the Champions League, but be in the fight at the end of the season, being that 5th, 6th place very, very close, where you can see the results of some of the young players coming in, which they will be called upon probably immediately because of all the injuries as well. And that's his future right there, because for Potter, even though he was brought probably for the right reasons, given what I see right now, signing of all those young players for the future, I have a feeling that there may be even more signings, right? Going back to the signing of Joao Felix, not a goal scorer. Who knows? Maybe there's another one that will come in. There will be a true number 9 coming in. We don't know that. And in terms of going scores for Felix, I'll continue. I think that's what he's probably thinking. Not that he's going to score 15 goals, but it's not a question of how many you score. It's when you score them, right? So as Tom was saying, what if he scores in 2 or 3 key games a winner, right? And that gives you 6 or 9 points. That's the question here. And I look at that schedule, like Tom said, there's a couple games against Fulham in it. There's Crystal Palace, there's West Ham, and there's Liverpool, maybe not at their best. So I've always said it. Goals are important. You want to score 15. What are we going to ask of him? He's going to be here for 5 months. Are we going to sit here and say, okay, now we need goals here. Joao Felix needs to give us 10, 15 goals? No, that's not an issue. Score key goals. And I think he could do that perhaps.
But talking about the goals, and obviously you mentioned that number 9 as well, Janusz, there is no obvious centre-forward replacement. Well, I'm saying replacement. There is no obvious centre-forward right now, is there, Tom, out there in the market for Chelsea?
This is the thing with Chelsea also. They've had, in recent memory, some real problems with that number 9 position. So they spent all that money on Lukaku. That didn't work. They spent all that time trying to bring in Aubameyang. That hasn't worked. So whatever number 9 they want has to be a very specific type of player. And we're looking at sort of the global transfer market as it stands. Manchester United are looking at a forward. So they went for the big 6'6", rangy Wout Weghorst, who I'm sure we'll talk about later. But he's the specific type. He's a stopgap. And these are the sort of strikers you're likely to see on the market at the moment. So unless perhaps, and I'm just plucking this out of thin air, they managed to get someone like Danny Ings, maybe. He's a natural number 9. He's exactly what they want, someone in there. But it just seems in terms of long-term targets at the moment, as you say, there's very few options on the market. And looking at their transfer strategy, we're looking at how they're sort of planning for the future. They've made 3 big signings already this month, 2 of which are definitely geared towards the next couple of years rather than now. But what Potter has to find is that sweet spot in between the long-term planning with their new backroom staff, Christopher Verbel coming in as the new technical director, but also the complete necessity for short-term results. And I think that's probably football's secret sauce, isn't it? Trying to combine the two, it's such a difficult skill. And it takes, likes of Ferguson mastered it, but it's going to be very, very hard for Potter if he continues losing these games.
And you brought up as well, Janusz, in fact, you both brought up now Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and the fact that the sub was subbed in that Premier League game against Manchester City. Does that tell us his days are numbered?
I think so. I've given up on him. I certainly have. It's a beautiful game, and why not enjoy it when you're at big clubs like that? He's failed a number of them, right? I mean, if you put aside, the great spell that he had at Arsenal and took that for granted, it seems to me. Then you get to Real Madrid, and that doesn't seem to work. Real Madrid, Barcelona, although it did work for a little bit, and then you're back in the Premier League, and look where we are. So yes, I've given up on him. I don't think there's a future for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang under Potter or anybody else for that matter.
Yeah, what about you, Tom? About Aubameyang?
Yeah, I think he's definitely struggled. And I think, as we said earlier, when he was signed, he was a Thomas Tuchel signing. He worked with him so closely at Borussia Dortmund. And it just hasn't clicked again under Potter so far. And I think what's really interesting is how to get the best out of Kai Havertz. And that's where I think this recruitment should be looking over this, for the short term. So perhaps if Felix can play further up the field and they can actually play Havertz off him. Havertz isn't a false 9. We're seeing this. Like we saw his game against Man City the other day. He really struggles to sort of either hold the ball up or play off the shoulder of players. He is a number 10. He's not a number 9. And that's where the recruitment should be key. Havertz is a brilliant player, but at the moment, Chelsea really aren't getting the best out of him. And I think that's where Aubameyang was signed to sort of try and unlock that, the potential and the ability we all know Havertz has. So I think that's where that number 9 should really be sort of pitched, looking at how they can bring the best out of the talent already there. But in terms of Aubameyang, just hasn't worked. Okay,
let's move on then. Oh, go on then, Janusz. I think you've got a little point to make there.
There's probably no reason to sign anybody just for the sake of signing again, right? I mean, I clearly can see that Chelsea are going to go big in the summer. And because I think they've recognized the fact right now that it's a longer rebuild. It's they're not hoping for Arsenal, Manchester United type of rebuild, but they realize they're not making the Champions League, and so it makes zero sense to spend money right now on players that we can't even think of because they really aren't available right now. I can't think of a 1 or 2 players that you would say, yes, let's spend, and that player guarantees you goals. So I think they're just going to wait, hope for the best. I know Chelsea fans don't want to hear it, but I think that's reality. And I'd be actually very, very disappointed if they once again went for another stopgap, really, for the most part, unless, there's a player out there that becomes available and it makes sense. But it makes zero sense to just sign a player for the sake of signing him, because they've had so many issues identifying that striker. They've had issues with Lukaku a couple times, right? And Timo Werner was another one. So I think they're smart enough. I would hope that they are smart enough to know now, say, okay, let's give ourselves now the next 4 or 5 months, identify a player, and go big on that player.
All right. I'm going to stick with you, Janusz, and then I want to get Tom's thoughts just on the outside of this. So there's been a lot of drama around the US men's national team. It's the Reyna versus Berhalter drama, obviously. As a former US international, Janusz, and somebody who knows both parties here, what have your thoughts been on the whole situation?
Very, very disappointed. Again, I mean, I'm friends with Reyna, as my former teammate. The whole situation with Gregg Berhalter is just, a low blow below the belt. I still can't believe it's happening. And it's really disappointing that a player and a manager now in position at Austin FC would go to that level. It feels to me like blackmail, unfortunately. And I mean, obviously, I haven't had that discussion. I may never have that discussion with Reyna. There's always context to it. But with everything that we know right now, it became personal, that it didn't need to become personal. Gregg Berhalter's wife was brought into it. Obviously, Gregg Berhalter came out, apologized for it, understood that he's made a mistake, but that was 30 years ago. He and his wife obviously are still together, so they've patched that up. And as far as we know, they're very happy with each other and with kids and all that. So, just really devastated in that situation that it had to come to this. Gio obviously has and will probably pay the price for that as well to some degree. For Claudio Reyna, this is, I mean, I hope it's not the case because I like second chances, but I think, the trust isn't there. I don't know how you deal with Claudio Reyna now in the environment of football that we live in. And, as he's involved with Austin FC and you have to talk to people in the business, right? I mean, you say to yourself, well, there was a conversation from 30 years ago. And I say Claudio Reyna, obviously his wife made those statements. I think Claudio did come out and mention that he stands behind his wife. And, on surface, with everything that we know, and again, mind you, that there may be context that I and everybody else don't, but that doesn't look good. I'm very, very disappointed with the whole situation.
Yeah, and on Danielle Reyna's side, at least she did say that she didn't expect this information that she'd used as an example to go further than it did. Tom, has it made the headlines back home in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a big topic here. You can see it in sort of the day-to-day newspapers. Obviously, working for ESPN, you have a really close eye on everything that's going on. I think the general view here is I think people are trying to understand exactly why it happened and also the wider ramifications of it. But also, it's just, from my perspective, it's not a good look at all for US soccer. And I think on one level, it's extremely sad the way things have panned out on a sort of a human level. But equally, looking at it from a football point of view, all that goodwill, all that momentum, which was built up from their impressive performances in Qatar, and that momentum has just come to a crushing halt. And with the World Cup in America and Mexico 3.5 years away, this is the last thing they need now, is they're looking to kind of build on recent success and try and get a whole country behind them. This is a really poor look, and above all, though, I just find it incredibly sad.
But the big talk now for the US men's national team is who the next coaching candidates will be. Obviously, we're going to see what's going to happen with Gregg Berhalter and his role there. Don't say Zidane, Janusz, because apparently that's not happening according to reports. But I said, you've got to reach for the moon, and at the very worst, you'll fall among the stars. Who do you see filling that role, if anyone, right now?
I absolutely agree with you. I think, I would say in general that, go for the best the money can buy. I mean, this is a critical critical time, because I think United States have had in my opinion, surprisingly very good World Cup, right? Because it's changed its identity. The one thing that you have to give Gregg Berhalter, regardless of what you think of him as a manager, he's good, better, and different if he's going to stay or not. And I don't think it looks that way. We just talked about, everything that's happened. I think that's untenable right now, regardless. But one thing that you got to give him credit for is that he's changed the style of play, right? United States, I remember in Brazil, that I think it was in Brazil game against Belgium, where I think Timmy Howard had to make like 16 saves. And I remember saying here at ESPN, just, all I want is a U.S. team that will go out there and play with the best, right? Not just sit back and hope for the best and counter. And we saw that, and specifically in the game against England, where U.S. dominated possession, which I didn't think that this very young team was capable of. And they did it in all the games, with the exception of the game against Holland. Although even within that game, they had periods of time where they had possession. So I think you have to go for the best. The World Cup is in the United States. This is a very young team that needs to go to the next level. Somebody's got to improve on that. Somebody with great experience, somebody that understands that. So the fact that they went after Zidane, I think, is great, because I didn't think he was going to say yes, but why not? I would definitely do the same with somebody like, say, talking possession, Luis Enrique. Go after him. Now, again, he may be in a position that the money that's being offered is not enough, or maybe the project is not enough. But I could see Luis Enrique continuing this sort of possession-oriented game that lacks a number 9, by the way, which he kind of likes. Yes, I know that Spain are very disappointed because there was a lot of possession with no end product. But look, I mean, this is Spain. It's easier to fix there than it is here. So I will go after him. So I'm starting that rumor right here, or hoping that maybe he's going to be asked to do that. Other than that, there's not a lot of names, and let's just wait and see. It's a critical decision. It doesn't have to be made right away. United States does not have to qualify. I think that it's going to be well thought out, because, as I said, in my time, 1994 World Cup, it was a catalyst to everything that we see in the game in the United States, the Major League Soccer and improvement and everything else that goes with it. This is the second catalyst, right, for United States to maybe be amongst the top teams. I'm not sitting here, no, hold your horses, saying the U.S. is going to be winning the World Cup, but I think it's an opportunity now to get the U.S. in the top 10 consistently, and maybe with a shout always to be sort of, quarterfinal, semifinal, something like that. So critical. Let's wait and see. Get all the money out of the piggy bank and go for the best.
Okay, Janusz, let me stick with you just 1 minute before we go to Tom, because we want to start talking transfers in a minute. But news today coming from Lionel Scaloni saying that Lionel Messi could actually feature in that World Cup in the US, Mexico, and Canada in 2026. Could you see that happening? And if it actually does go ahead and it happens, what kind of role is he going to be playing?
Yeah, I mean, that depends on his attitude. Lionel Messi will do what Lionel Messi will want to do, and he's assured himself now that he has to say, because he's now in the top 3 of all time easily, right? He's going to be 39, so I mean, he does have this walkabout thing about him, right? So I mean, if he pulls something out of a hat, some magic trick, if he was there, I mean, he's still going to be capable of that. But look, I think Lionel Messi, will be playing for Argentina. I think he said as much. This wasn't his last game. I think he's going to help Argentina to qualify for the next World Cup. That's for sure, because players like that you can't dismiss, obviously. But 4 years from now, 39. My goodness. Gigi Buffon played yesterday, didn't he? Played very, very well. He's 45, but that's on Parma, and that's in Italy. I think it's
goalkeeper.
Yeah, and a goalkeeper, but it's possible. But I think we are having fun with this for now, right? Because I don't know what's going to happen when Lionel Messi's 39 years old. He may be on the beach in Miami somewhere, watching the game.
Let's talk some of the transfers, Tom, because one of the surprising rumors right now is Eden Hazard to Arsenal. Arsenal said to be looking at the possibility of a loan deal for the Belgian, and it seems that his form and his fitness, or lack thereof, for Real Madrid hasn't put them off.
I mean, I was surprised by this one. I simply cannot see this happening. He's just not the sort of player that you'd imagine Arteta would like to bring in. Now, obviously, fast forward 2 weeks and it's happened, and I look extremely silly. But I cannot understand why they'd go for a player like Hazard, who at the moment is so short of form and fitness. We all know, look, he is a brilliant player, but the transfer to Real Madrid hasn't worked out. This season, he's played in just 3 La Liga matches, unused substitute much of the time. During the World Cup, we didn't really see much signs of the old Hazard there either. I'd be extremely surprised if this came off. I just don't think it's the sort of player which Arsenal want or necessarily need.
Any thoughts on it, Janusz?
Is he coming? Would he be coming for almost like free? Or, I mean, if he was, I like, if there's a coach, I'm with you. I mean,
Nothing's free, is it?
No, but I mean, he wouldn't. I think Real Madrid would be very happy to get rid of him rather cheaply, wouldn't they? Right? Part of me thinks, if there's a coach, Mikel Arteta. I mean, he was the best in the Premier League once or twice. I can't remember. No indications, but if it wasn't too costly, why not? Experience. I mean, what's there to lose? You can always get rid of him. So highly unlikely, but Mikel Arteta strikes me as a manager that would like this project to kind of see if he can revive what we saw once in Eden Hazard. And remember, there was a season where he was unplayable, right? Premier League.
Let me stick with you, Janusz, because it's a player that we knew very well from the Bundesliga in Wout Weghorst, whose name has come up next. To Manchester United, it looks as though a verbal agreement has been reached. They'll pay Besiktas €3 million to end his loan early and take him from his parent club, Burnley, for the rest of the season. You'll remember those 2 goals against Argentina and the spat with Messi in Qatar. He's 6'6". He was brilliant. He was consistent at Wolfsburg. Would this be a good fit, do you think?
I think it would be zero risk. I love him. I mean, you know me. I mean, I've been talking about Wout when he was in Bundesliga. I've always felt that he's the sort of player that's kind of under the radar, not in a way of a superstar, but I think a player that's capable of scoring goals. Look, I mean, even I loved him at Burnley as well, even though, I mean, he wasn't a prolific goal scorer, but I think he contributed. And that's the beauty of it. He's humble enough, I think. He's one of those players that no matter where he goes, when he comes on the pitch, he makes a difference. You've mentioned what happened in the World Cup. I actually commentated that game. Was extremely happy for him because, I don't know, I think it just, in my book, he's the sword that, especially in January, he can come in, he can really, really help you. So I think it's a great buy. Part of me thought that, why not Chelsea? Chelsea would have been a team that could use Weghorst in that, because the way they play, obviously they have so many wide players. They're capable of delivering a ball, and you have a pure 9 that kind of, I don't want to say that sits there because he does a lot more for a big guy. But I think there's almost zero risk for Manchester United. I mean, I don't see it. I don't see a risk here. And as I sit here, we're talking about Wout because he's a very likable player. He's a player, obviously, I think of him as a manager's dream. So I think he's going to contribute, and I like the signing.
You're nodding away at a number of points there, Tom Hamilton.
I am. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant piece of business. Though he didn't score that many goals for Burnley, he brings something different to the team. He's tall, he's strong, he can hold the ball up. Imagine him playing alongside Rashford. Again, it's a sort of a no-risk transfer. And Man United have done this really, really well in the past. Remember when they took Henrik Larsson on loan? More recently, they took Igalo. They worked out. Of course, on the other end of the scale, you got Falcao, which was an unmitigated disaster. So United fans will be hoping it's more Larsson and Falcao, but I think it's a really decent piece of business and pretty astute from Erik ten Hag.
One thing we know about Brighton, Tom, is that they've been very good at identifying players, selling them at a profit. There's 2 names right now that I want to put up to you. Moises Caicedo to Liverpool and Leandro Trossard to Spurs. What more can you tell us about these rumours?
I think on the Caicedo front, Klopp at the start of the transfer window, after he signed Cody Gakpo, said that it's kind of a monopoly market at the moment. Such are the prices being quoted by clubs and so forth. And obviously with Caicedo having played so well at the World Cup, his stock has definitely risen. If this is something which goes ahead, I imagine it would be something which would be probably more closely pursued in the summer. And I think also the destination of Caicedo is probably also reliant on what happens to Jude Bellingham. Different players, but equally 2 extremely promising, impressive defensive midfielders or central midfielders. So Caicedo, I think, would be a brilliant fit for Liverpool. Exactly the sort of profile of a player they want. He's done so well at Brighton. While I expect that probably to happen, if it does happen later in the summer, I think Trossard's a really interesting one. He's exactly what Tottenham need at the moment. He's played well in the Premier League. He brings experience. He brings another option up front. He kind of takes that pressure off Harry Kane. I think if Trossard was available, then other clubs suddenly would start to pounce as well. He's that sort of player where he can slot into systems. He's very versatile. He's used to the Premier League. He ticks a lot of boxes.
And that's another player I want to bring up from the Bundesliga now, Janusz. I feel as though you want to say something about those Brighton players, though.
Caicedo for Liverpool. I mean, I would do it now if there's a way, and of course we don't know. I mean, they need legs. I mean, this is because one of my favorite players, and unrealistic maybe, but it's been mentioned by everybody, and I think even in the rumor mill of Liverpool was Enzo Fernandez, who I absolutely love, but at this point, I mean, you could easily make an argument that if Enzo Fernandez wanted to come to Liverpool, you take him, but that's not exactly what Liverpool needs, right? I mean, that midfield needs legs, and that's exactly what you're going to get. A physical player, box to box. He can defend, he can attack. We saw that, I think, against Senegal. If you remember, he scored a goal in the first game, or their first game in the World Cup. I think it was first or second. Regardless, Moises Caicedo, the profile, as Tom said, for Liverpool at this moment, they need it now. They need it right away because that's not going to be easily fixed, even when everybody's healthy. That would be a perfect signing, or nearly perfect signing at this moment.
The next talker, Janusz, that I wanted to put to you is the name Youssoufa Moukoko. Obviously, we get to see the wonderful work that he's done for Borussia Dortmund, still very young. The talk is there will be a free transfer in the summer to Newcastle. They're very much interested. He's out of contract in the summer. Chelsea have been linked as well, but apparently the wage demands are high for this player. Can you see him coming to the Premier League, and would you like to see him there?
Yes, I mean, I still need to see a little bit more. I mean, he's so young, and we saw initially when he started playing for Borussia Dortmund, it wasn't all that easy, right? Then he kind of went to the bench again, and now he reemerged right now, just before the World Cup. We saw the quality there. He's just simply getting chances, right? Or, Haaland has left. Obviously, there's been a lot of injuries at Dortmund as well. So he consistently gets opportunities there. Look, you've mentioned this. I mean, the key thing is he's very young, he's very talented, but most importantly, he's free, or he will be free in the summer. So I think for Newcastle United, as they rebuild, why not? Eddie Howe has done a tremendous job improving the players that he has. I think the way Newcastle has gone about their season and their transfer policy has been absolutely wonderful. They buy players, not just for the sake of buying players, even though obviously they have money. So I see it. Is he the sort of player that's going to come into the Premier League and light it on fire immediately? I'm not convinced just yet. He's going to need time. So, not that I have doubts, but just enough to think, longer term project.
Tom, it's interesting, isn't it, to see that Newcastle are getting mentioned alongside the clubs that are usually getting the big names and the up-and-coming players?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a sign of the progress they've made, but also how clever their transfer business is as well, because they've really, I mean, we talk about all the money they've got, but they've judged it perfectly on the signings they've made so far. Look at Dan Burn scoring his first goal for the club the other day. Moukoko would be a real statement signing, the sign that Newcastle are there looking to compete at the highest level in terms of honours and also in European competitions as well. He's the sort of guy on which you could, we've seen Chelsea offering players incredibly long contracts, 7.5-year deals like Badiashile got. If Moukoko, I imagine he'd be on the same sort of deal. He's the sort of thing where you can build a team around him for the next 10 years if his trajectory continues in the way it has so far. But it's just another sign of how clever Newcastle are and also the ambitions at that club.
All right. It's great to hear from both of you guys. We're going to stick around with you, Tom, but Janusz, we are going to free you for now, but we're going to be hearing from you over the weekend with some Premier League chat and reaction.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Tom.
Let's welcome in Sophie Lawson now then, shall we? Because we wanted to turn our attentions to the WSL, especially with it returning from the winter break. Hello, Sophie. Thanks so much for being with us. Let's talk about that big game then. It's back with a bang. It's Arsenal taking on Chelsea. What can we look out for here?
Hey, it should be a good sort of clash of two very good informed midfields. Then it gets a little hazy as to who's fit at the minute, because we're just coming off a nice little winter break, and then you've got new signings for Arsenal as well. Are they going to start? How quickly are they going to integrate? So I think what we're going to see is just a lot of the ball in the middle of the park, and the two teams who have had a few Barneys over the years, so it could get a little bit not heated, but it could get a little spicy as well.
Oh, well, that's definitely going to be one to look out for. Tom, are you looking forward to seeing this game?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Chelsea are at the top of the WSL just before the break. But I think Chelsea are probably look more vulnerable than they have in recent years. They perhaps haven't quite clicked as much as we've seen in the past. And I know, although they beat Reading just before the break, those 2 goals they conceded were pretty alarming from a Chelsea point of view. They've had a sort of quite a turbulent season in many ways with illness as well. But it's one of these things now. It'll be a real barometer of where both teams are. Arsenal, without Miedema and without Mead, long-term absentees, be a test of their resources and strength and depth. And I think that'll be the key now for the rest of the season, that strength and depth. And as things stand, I think Chelsea have the better squad. They'll be buoyed, obviously, by the return of Loopholes as well. I'm not sure if she'll feature this weekend, but she's got a new deal after being on maternity leave. But it's going to be a fascinating match. It'll be a real sign of where both teams are, with the rest of the season to play for.
Sophie, tell us about your most recent article that you've just written.
I decided to have a little look at how the summer signings are doing so far, as they've had a few months, and you think this is a good time to see how they're doing, especially as we've got new signings coming in. And I think, when you look at some of the bigger names as well, maybe they haven't gelled, but you got to look at players like Darley and Daly, who are doing so much for Villa. You got to look at sort of the growth in Liverpool as well, with the signings of Kovisto and Flaherty. And I think what we're seeing more in terms of the signings from the summer is it's the sort of slightly off the radar names, or not the big blockbuster names who have been impressive so far. And as we're going into another signing window now, and we've already got some moves happening, it sets up nicely for who could be the surprise packages, who could help their teams push for maybe top 4, or sort of setting them up for into next season as well. So I tried to take a little look at that and not upset too many people along the way.
Okay, so this is a nice one then. You won't upset too many people with this. Who's been your standout of those signings?
I think Kenta Darley has been, she just springs to mind. She's done a huge amount in that Aston Villa midfield. Just gets the team moving forward so well, and has paired so well with Rachel Daly, that she just, I think just very underrated for all that she does. Even though we hate using the word underrated, she's done does a huge amount every game.
I want to just ask you as well, Sophie, what the future looks like for Grace Gayoro, because I keep seeing her name coming up, and whether she can be poached from PSG. They're looking, she's a big target, obviously, in the transfer window, but what's going to happen there?
That's a very good question. She's PSG's captain as well, so they're not going to want to let her go. And she's such a key player for them. So I think Chelsea is still very interested, because she's a fantastic midfielder, and Emma Hayes always loves adding players of just that caliber. But at the moment, she's got a deal with PSG. She's there. Maybe we'll see her move in the summer after completing the season. There's PSG now back in sort of the hunt for silverware in France as well, so she might not want to leave. But I think that there's interest from both sides, but might be one to wait out a little bit longer.
And just finally, just want to touch on the fact that we're always talking about the top clubs in the WSL. And we've heard these names come up already in the likes of Villa and Spurs. Are they looking to grow and to start competing with those top 4?
Well, I think you have to, especially now that we've broadened out the Champions League a little. So now it's the top 3 in WSL who qualify. So it's that little bit more. Oh well, if it's not trying to break into the top 2. It's you're finding a little bit more room, and you see Spurs signing Beth England to try and sort out their goal drought. You've got Villa, who are just building. I think even if you look at Brighton, what they're doing as well, there's a lot of investment off the pitch. There's a lot of big ideas there. The problem is always if every team moves up a step, everyone stays a step, you're not really gaining a huge amount of ground. So I think when you look at these teams, it's more a long-term investment. It's more about what they can do season on season, and maybe any stumbles at the teams above them, because we've seen like Man City haven't been too solid the last couple of seasons. Man United have a lot of potential, but are they going to stay the course? Because they wobbled a bit themselves. And as Tom said, Chelsea haven't been their very best selves this season either. So there's always room if you can find those good 90-minute performances week after week.
I think also those. Yeah, absolutely. And I think also those signings which Aston Villa have made, you've got the World Cup happening, in 7 months' time. You've got Jordan Nobbs, who's obviously looking to try and gate crash that England squad, an incredibly talented midfielder. You've got Lucy Stammerforth, who hasn't played for England for a few years now. She was part of the 2019 group as well. So you're going to have a group of players, especially with Beth England, too, at Spurs, who are trying to force their way into the reckoning. And these sort of mid-season moves are fascinating. So those guys who might have been a bit more on the periphery are now playing every single game. Great news for Serena Vigman, great news for the WSL, but it will be interesting to see how sort of the balance of power shifts over the next 6 months, and also which teams can really prosper from this window and which teams may perhaps missed out.
Sophie, have you got any thoughts on how the season's going to play out then?
It's a tricky one. I think it's probably going to go a lot like they usually do, that some teams are going to go on great mazy runs and then drop points in places they probably shouldn't. But I think the current top four is probably going to end up being our final top four. But it feels like a great season sort of just for development and growth, especially with more eyes on the sport. And as we head into, another tournament summer, I think it's going to get bigger and better. But I don't really see too much happening in terms of the current top four.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPNFC 7 days a week, subscribe to ESPN+.